Welcome back to Boilers in the Stands. We are at the midpoint of the season, and Purdue is 15-1. You're watching Boilers in the Stands tonight for our midseason mailbag review show with special guests Sam King, Bobby Riddell, and Dustin Schutte. And we're going to look ahead at the rest of the season and take a look back at the first half of the season in just a second. Joining me now is Dustin Schutte, Sam King, and Bobby Riddell. Dustin Schutte joins us as a writer and publisher for Purdue Boilermakers on SI. Sam King is a writer for Journal and Courier and USA Today Network. And you all know Bobby Riddell, former player from 2005 to 2009 at Purdue and a current color analyst for Purdue Basketball Radio. Guys, how's everybody doing today?
Outstanding. How are you?
Good.
Doing great.
All right.
Happy to be here.
All right. I was really excited about this show. I really wanted to do a mailbag show around the midpoint of the year. Joe's got a lot of work he's doing and going on. And as soon as he kind of told me that he was going to be busy tonight, wasn't going to be able to hop on, my immediate thought was Joe and I kind of, with Boilers in the Stands, Joe and I kind of live in this echo chamber because you guys know how it is. When you're covering Purdue basketball, you're watching all these other Big Ten games to try to be prepared for that next game that's coming up and everything else. You don't really have time to listen to everybody else's content or read everybody else's content all the time. So you kind of live in this echo chamber of the people that you talk to. And I thought, you know what? There's a lot of great people that cover Purdue basketball. I'm going to reach out to some voices that I don't necessarily know exactly what their opinions are on things right now, and put together a little bit of an all-star cast here of Purdue basketball analysts and let some fans ask some questions. And I have a couple as well for you. So I'm going to start, Bobby, with you. We're at the midway point. Purdue is 15-1. The one loss they had, though, was pretty dramatic. It was pretty much a smack in the face type of loss. So what are your thoughts on the season up to this point? Has anything changed in your expectations at all about this team from the beginning of the year to where they stand right now?
I don't think so. I mean, there's certainly been some ebbs and flows at times throughout the season, and certain guys have had high points and low points, but I think where we are now is about where I thought we would be as a team at this point. 15-1, obviously a tremendous record. Sure, we'd love to be 16-0, and the fact that one loss happened at Mackey, which happens so rare these days, was a little bit of a surprise, even though it was against another elite team in the country this year in Iowa State, who's currently now ranked second in the country and is still undefeated. But kind of to your point, the way we lost was obviously a little bit startling just because it was kind of in a dominating fashion or blowout fashion. I do think that game itself was a little bit of randomness involved with the fact that we just had a super poor shooting night on the same night. They kind of went nuclear in the second half, and because it was a very close game at the half when both teams were kind of struggling to shoot the ball in the first half, and then that second half was kind of a perfect storm of them getting red hot and us staying cold. But I did think they had a really solid defensive game plan with just the way they, from a interior defensive standpoint, really tried to take away all of our traditional post-up options with Trey and Oscar Clough by doubling the post extremely hard and really moving to the strong side of the basketball and leaving that weak side open. And a lot of times I feel like they did a good job as far as who they left open in rotations was oftentimes, the worst shooter on the floor for Purdue, or at least percentage-wise. And unfortunately for Purdue, that game, a lot of those guys weren't able to step up and hit shots. And there was obviously lots of other factors in the second half with some turnovers and things of that nature too. But I thought their game plan was sound, and that's something that, matchups are big, right? And if a team plays us again that plays a similar matchup, and it actually felt like just in this past game, there was a similar defensive game plan where every time Trey Kaufman-Renn or Oscar Clough caught the ball in a traditional post-up, there was a hard double. But that particular game, last game, we had a lot of guys step up and hit outside shots. So it became a different story. But back to your main question, I'm kind of happy with where we're at. And I still think this team's got an amazing future and a chance to make a deep run.
All right, Dustin, anything to add to that?
No, I think Bobby hit the nail on the head. I think if you were to look at this, the schedule and the tough non-conference slate that Purdue tends to play every year, if you look at the record at 15-1, 5-0 in the Big Ten, you take that. It's been a tough schedule. They've got some really good wins, but I don't think I could say it any better.
Yeah. Sam, I'm going to flip the question to you just a little bit here. Looking where we were at coming into this season, we all kind of had probably something in our mind about the NCAA tournament, about like at minimum, this team is a X team. And at max, at their best version, they're this capable of doing this. Has anything changed in your mind about the floor or the ceiling, and where do you think that floor and ceiling is as an NCAA tournament team?
No, absolutely not. Kind of like Bobby said, it's one loss, and that won't be the last loss Purdue has this season. There will be another time where the team doesn't shoot well, doesn't defend well, stubs its toe. The Big Ten is a grind. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a couple more losses in there. But I think going into the season, we all believe Purdue was the best team in the Big Ten. Michigan State, and to a degree, Illinois have kind of thrown their names in that hat too. And then Nebraska's just been something nobody thought. So that's kind of the surprise you get every year as some team comes out of nowhere and is spectacular. So that game in Omaha between Purdue and Nebraska looks huge. That, going into the season, maybe not. But I think a lot of people, at least people around the team, thought this team could win a national title. And that's easy to say, extremely hard to do when you have to win 6 games that are, one and done settings. If it was NBA playoffs, I would say Purdue's chance is probably better than in a 68-team tournament where you just have to win 6 games in a row. I still believe Purdue can do that. I think, at minimum, Purdue was a second weekend team, even, given the randomness, I guess, of the tournament, because Purdue is going to be a 1 or 2 seed, most likely, when it gets to this tournament. And if it takes care of business the way it should, it probably will end up being a number 1 seed. My thought after the Iowa State game was, okay, that happened. How does Purdue respond to that? And I thought the next, 6 games since then responded quite well, even though Washington got close. Penn State was close for a while. I never felt like Purdue was threatened in those games, like it was not going to win. So smacked some teams in the mouth right after that, played a lot better defensively for, 4.5 straight games. I think the Wisconsin game after Braden broke the assist record, it almost seemed like that was what the team went there for, and then kind of stopped playing for a while. So that was another game that got closer than it should have been late, but again, never thought Wisconsin was going to come back and win that. So the response from that Iowa State loss kind of told me more about Purdue than that Iowa State loss told me about Purdue.
Perfect. I love that. And as Joe kind of highlighted, as we talked about that Iowa State loss, there's just not too many games where Purdue is going to go 1 of 16 on open catch and shoot threes. Like, not going to happen. All right. So, Dustin, you brought up the non-conference schedule, so I'm going to send this to you first. A year ago, looking at Purdue's non-conference slate, you were like, oh, wow, Purdue's got a really good non-conference slate yet again. Sitting right now, though, Purdue's only faced 3 top 25 KenPom teams on the year. Are there any concerns about, has this team been tested enough yet, and or concerns about, did they play a tough enough non-conference to get that like overall number 1 seed or really secure a 1 seed?
Yeah, I think that's a fair concern at this point. I mean, you would probably say that the best team that they played obviously was Iowa State, and they took one in the chops in that game, as we've all kind of lamented that fact so far. But I really still think that going on the road to beat a good Alabama team in Tuscaloosa, I thought that kind of showed this team's mental fortitude. And that was a game, and I know we're only 3 games into the season at that point, but remember the first 2 games, there were some questions about Purdue, even when Trey Kaufman-Renn was out. Like, are they going to be able to rebound? Are they going to be able to play good enough defensively? And so for them to get that big road win early in the year against Alabama, I thought that really kind of set the tone. I still think Auburn just smacked Arkansas in the mouth. So I think that even though that game got out of hand, and I think you even mentioned it on the podcast shortly after that game, Kraig, the thing that impressed me about that game against Auburn was Purdue didn't have like a 15 or 16 point run. It was like they were up by 7, then they were up by 12 or 13, then it was 20. It was just kind of death by 1,000 cuts. And to me, even though maybe the non-conference schedule, and obviously Marquette has been bad compared to their standards and just bad overall this season, but the thing that's been impressive to me about Purdue this year is they can win games both by stringing together those 12 to 15 point runs, or they can beat you just by scoring 6 to 8 points and getting, kills throughout the game, 3 defensive stops in a row. So I'm not going to be too overly concerned about the non-conference portion of the schedule. I still think they have some quality wins in there. And the fact that they won, it wasn't like they beat Auburn by 6 points, right? Like they went into Indy and won that game handedly. And then you're going to have a lot of tests here in the Big Ten, Michigan, Nebraska, Michigan State, Illinois, a lot of really good high quality teams in the Big Ten. So I don't think the non-conference portion of the schedule is really going to be a hindrance to this team later down the road.
Anything to add from anybody else on that?
Well, yeah, Texas Tech, like Dustin was talking about, we beat Auburn handily, also smacked Texas Tech handily. So an impressive margin of victory there. And they've gone on to do some nice things since that win. They beat Duke, which was an impressive win for Texas Tech. But you're right. It's unfortunate the super high level wins from a non-conference standpoint that maybe we've had in recent years, or just the quantity of those isn't maybe quite there. But still only the one loss, a couple other nice wins, and those wins came either on the road or by substantial margins. And then we're not in like the Big East or the ACC where the conference slate is going to be weak. We're going to get all kinds of bumps in our strength of schedule once we go through this conference grind. So,
can I add one more thing in there, Kraig? And I think a lot of people also look at, when you look at Purdue's schedule, you look at the Iowa States, the Alabamas, Texas Tech, but they played some really good teams at the non-power level. Like Kent State and Akron, they have really good offenses. Oakland is a team coached by Greg Kampe, who's been there for 40 plus years, and they've had a gauntlet of a schedule, and he thought that this could be one of their better teams. So I would say just don't necessarily look at the power team and don't look at the name across the jersey, because Matt Painter has done a really good job of not just scheduling those high major games, but these mid-major teams are often tournament teams or at the top of their conference. So I think that that's a factor too. Yeah.
And I think, I put a tweet out just a little bit earlier today in terms of where they're at right now from a quad 1 standpoint and a quad 1A standpoint as well. But looking ahead, this Purdue team has 7 quad 1A opportunities left. Nebraska being as good as they are helps, facing them on the road, and they also have 10 total quad 1 games left on the year. And their schedule strangely worked out in their favor. And we looked at it ahead of the season and we're like, oh, Purdue gets to play all these top tier teams at home. Okay. Other than Nebraska, which they got to go on the road to, and I guess Iowa, which they have a home and away with. But it worked out perfect from a quad standpoint because they get all these teams that are going to be 1A teams because of where they rank in net at home. And then when they go on the road, some of these teams that are mid-pack in the Big Ten are still going to be quad 1 wins or losses either way because they're on the road. So to me, it kind of worked out almost perfectly from that standpoint. So Bobby, I'm going to ask you one more question for me, and then I'm going to get to some questions from fans that they've submitted. After some struggles earlier this year, Purdue has moved all the way up to 14th in KenPom defensive efficiency. At one point, they currently sit at 20th. Have we seen enough to know that this defense is real? Did the Penn State game, in terms of guards getting penetration on this defense again, do anything to make you wonder whether this is a top 15 defense, or are they closer to maybe that 30 area?
The dribble penetration is definitely an area of concern. There's no doubt. When we play teams that got multiple guards who can break you down off the dribble, that's going to be a game that worries you, no doubt, just because once you allow dribble penetration, even if you, like against Penn State, if you can smartly sometimes sag off certain guys to provide help because they shoot lower percentages, well, these guys are Division I players that are fully capable of making wide open shots from time to time, even if they don't shoot high percentages. And I think we saw that with Penn State from time to time. Some guys step up and hit open shots, even though I'm sure Purdue was designing their defense to provide help off those guys if the penetration did occur and those guys stepped up and hit shots. And then that's where all of a sudden, defensively you can be in have some issues there when other guys step up and hit shots that you're expecting to miss them. But that's where you don't want to be providing help in the first place, right? And that's where allowing that dribble penetration to begin with is a big issue. And Purdue's definitely got some guys on their team that struggle at times keeping guys in front of them, and that's where game in, game outs, you have to be really cognizant of know your personnel, which guys are drivers, which guys are shooters, and that's the thing defensively as we move along. Can these guys really lock in on those sorts of things from a scouting report standpoint? And or you have to hope, if you don't on certain occasions, that you have guys like an Oscar Clough or Daniel Jacobson in the interior to erase those mistakes. And I think that is a big piece this year of why we do rank so high defensively, is even though we still maybe have, we're not perfect on the perimeter and do make mistakes from time to time, we do have some interior defensive presence that's able to mitigate some of that dribble penetration and erase those mistakes. And I think it's been out there now that Ken Palm's got that new stat where it's tracking the length of 2-point field goals. I think you guys have talked about this, Kraig, on your podcast. Offensively, Purdue ranks near the bottom. We take a lot of long twos. The good news is those guys taking long twos for us are guys that make them at a super high percentage. But defensively, we're ranked near the top, where we allow a lot of long twos, we force a lot of long twos. And so that's a credit, of course, to what we're doing defensively from a scheme standpoint. And, whether that's drop coverage and, making guys kind of take those floaters or mid-range jumpers that they're not super comfortable with. I'm sure that's a part of it at times. But I also do like our flexibility that coaches talked about in that Wisconsin game, Kraig, where the first 8 minutes were in drop coverage. They're just penetrating. They're getting way deeper than we'd like. We're not quite getting that drop perfectly. It was kind of a deeper drop than ideal. So all of a sudden you're inviting that deep penetration. The guard isn't able to get over the top in a timely fashion to be able to square that ball handler up and keep him out of the paint. Now they're getting layups or dump downs. And, in the past, our big men, it might have kind of just been, all right, that's the style that we have to play, and we can't really transition away from it. Like with the Zach Edey, like he's playing drop no matter what, right? Well, Oscar and seems like even Daniel to some degree, Oscar especially though, has the flexibility to really get out there and high hedge if we want to make a change, an adjustment mid-game. They did that. They switched to a high hedge. Now all of a sudden we're knocking Wisconsin out of what they want, and we were able to have much more success defensively that way. So I do like the versatility and flexibility we have defensively more than maybe we've had in the past. But yeah, I mean, I'm still, when we play a high-powered offense, like I'm still going to be scared. Like I still think, and you guys have talked about this, Kraig, like we're still an offensive team. Like we're not going to be able to beat a good team like Iowa State if we go 1 for 16 from 3. Like that's just reality. Like we still need to be able to beat people with our offense, which we did against Penn State, which was nice to see. And but hopefully our defense is solid enough that we can beat a good team if they don't play super great offensively and have kind of a mediocre game. As long as we're not really bad offensively, we can hopefully still win.
Yeah. Anything you want to add to that, Dustin or Sam?
I think he covered it pretty well.
Covered it. All right.
I get long-winded. I get in Coach Painter long-winded mode sometimes.
It's all good. All right. So first question from Purdue basketball fan, and I really hope I don't butcher this last name, but I'm going to give it my best shot. Matthew Grahovac asked about Purdue's free throw rate currently sitting at 343rd in the country this year, the lowest of the Painter tenure per Bart Torvik. Their offense is still historically good, but he's curious why you think that is. And I'll just add on a caveat. Are you worried about the fact that we're not getting to the foul line, especially in those games when we do struggle from outside? Because as I prep for preview shows multiple times, I've been like, oh, these guys actually foul quite a bit. We can get to the line. Or, hey, if we get this one big man out, they really don't have anybody behind them. And then I have to remind myself, like, we're not really drawing fouls this year at a very high rate. Sam, I'll throw that one to you first. I know the answer. I think I know the answer why too, but I'll let you answer. Why aren't we drawing fouls at a rate where we're used to? And is that something that worries you, especially in games where we're not shooting the ball well?
Yeah, well, I think the first obvious answer is we saw Zach Edey for, exclusively for 3 years, but for 4 years. And his final 2 years, you couldn't do anything but foul him. So you're getting to the foul line at an elite level. But Purdue also is averaging more than 24 3-point attempts per game this year. That is the second most in the Matt Painter era, probably the second most in school history, I would imagine, knowing the Gene Cady teams and when the 3-point line was introduced. The only team that shot more threes was Carson Edwards' junior year, and I'm sure he had quite a bit to do with that season and that average. But I wouldn't be that concerned about it, mostly because Purdue's shooting almost 52% from the field, which is far and away the best percentage field goal wise that any Painter team has had in now whatever it is 21 years, and averaging something like 32 plus made field goals per game, which is far and away the most that any Purdue team has made in a season, which that tells me this is still a very elite offense. It's just kind of going back to the long twos and a lot of 3-point attempts. You're taking high percentage shots for the players that you have, but those aren't field goal attempts that typically lend themselves to getting fouled and getting to the free throw line. Oscar Clough got to the line quite a bit last game. When Purdue goes to the post and is physical, you're going to draw fouls just by design, but Purdue's gone to the post less than a long time anyway this season.
Yeah. I'll let either or. Here's how we're going to do it going forward. After the main person answers the question, if either of you want to jump in instead of me asking every time, just go ahead and jump it.
I'll sneak in here before Dustin, then Dustin can tack on too if he wants. I think, a lot of it also is, as Sam was talking about, high percentage shots that are being generated by playing advantage basketball a lot. Like, I think Braden Smith's so good in ball screen action, 2 guys on the ball, pocket pass. Now we're playing 4-on-3. Like, teams aren't going to foul you when you're playing advantage basketball, because when you're 4-on-3, somebody's open and they're going to take a wide open shot, right? Like, they don't have enough defenders to match up to us. Also, because of Trey Kaufman-Renn and Oscar Clough being so effective on the low block one-on-one, I feel like we've seen a lot of double teams. And so now all of a sudden, ball comes out, 4-on-3, advantage basketball, wide open shot. Also, as Sam pointed out, a lot of threes. And I think a lot of threes are being taken because when you play advantage basketball, the defense is taught to protect the paint. So the guy who's open a lot of times is that guy shooting a three. And so I think some of just the brilliance of Braden Smith and Trey Kaufman-Renn, especially, they're so good at forcing teams to have to commit multiple defenders to their space that we're playing advantage basketball a lot.
I think the only other thing I would add on to this is that Braden is so comfortable with his mid-range shot. I think a lot of point guards are going to attack the basket if things aren't going well. But he's so comfortable, shooting that when he's falling into the baseline there, that I just don't think he has to attack the basket and isn't drawing as much contact. The other thing I think I don't know that this is foul related necessarily, but the way that Oscar Clough gets his points, a lot of the times it's just off of the offensive glass, and he makes a decision so quickly to get it up and put it in. And I think that's a big reason why, like, he's not hesitating when he gets the ball down low. He's not taking 4 or 5 dribbles. He gets the ball and he puts it up or he kicks it out. In the last game against Penn State, he had 4 offensive rebounds. Purdue had 8 points off of those offensive rebounds. So I think that those two things are the things that stuck out to me as well.
And we're taking all those long twos, right? We're second in the country in longest twos. So to Dustin's point, Braden's shooting unbelievably difficult fadeaway twos along the baseline that he somehow makes like 70% of them. And right, when you're taking long twos, less chance to get hit near the rim. And Trey Kaufman-Renn's usage is obviously really down too, and he was our biggest guy drawing fouls last year, so that plays a part.
Yeah, but even with that said, I think another big part of it is just like when your dominant big man's go-to move is an 8-foot floater, right? Like it's not back to the basket, like really bodying somebody up. That's also going to diminish the amount of fouls that are drawn in my mind. Now, I think in the last handful of games, he's dug down and tried to get all the way to the rim a few more times, and certainly can still draw fouls. But I'm still like, I'm not worried about it, but like, I'm just like, man, if we have one of those games where we're not hitting, like, and we need to find another way to win, it'd be nice to go to the foul line 15 times, you know?
Yeah.
So
Getting the bonus and all that stuff.
Yep. From that standpoint. All right. So on that kind of vein, because we were talking about TKR right at the end of this. So Blake Widmer contributed earlier. What does he think, or what do we think about TKR's unselfishness? Only took 6 shots against Penn State in a barn burner, but had 4 assists, no turnovers, and almost had more offensive rebounds than the entire Penn State team. And also in the chat, just to kind of double up here, Double D Sports, if I can find it now, I have brought something up similar. Any thoughts on TKR's new role this year? More of a rebounder and an effort guy than a pure scorer. Dustin, we haven't gone to you first for a while, so I'm going to let you answer this first. And I imagine this is one everybody's only going to chime in a little bit too.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of go back to what TKR has said in interviews, whether it's post-game or before a game throughout this season, and it's basically like he likes to be able to impact the game in other ways. And as much as I'm sure he wants to average, 20 points a game like he did last year. I think everybody that plays basketball wants to average 20 points per game. But the fact that he doesn't have to carry that heavy load, the fact that he can, he can make an impact on the glass, and he's such a good passer. The thing that has really, I think, has developed one of his underrated skills, not only the fact that he's now averaging 10 rebounds per game, but he's gotten so good at those lob throws to Daniel Jacobson. I think he had one to Oscar Clough the other day. Like, that's such a weapon because you don't have just Braden Smith throwing that. You can get the ball to Trey Kaufman-Renn at the elbow, and he can throw it up and find Daniel Jacobson or Oscar Clough at the rim. So I think he's just developing his game all the way around, and he wants to be able to make an impact in multiple ways. And a quote has stuck with me. He said this early in the season, like there's times when he knows he's not getting the ball offensively and he's kind of licking his chops because he knows that if the shot doesn't go in, he's going to get the offensive rebound and get 2 points that way. And I think that, even from before the season started, he was the guy that was talking about, I'm so focused on winning a national championship. I'm so focused on winning the Big Ten that is, I believe, his primary goal, and he'll do anything it takes to get there. And so that's required him to, get more offensive rebounds, even though he's, not maybe scoring as much. He's still making, I would argue he's making a bigger impact than he did a season ago, just because of how he's impacting the game on multiple levels.
Yeah, and last year he was playing a 5, which is not his natural position. He's clearly capable of being a 5. I like the spacing he probably gets more being a 4. I wonder what it would have looked like last year had Daniel Jacobson not gotten hurt so early. And then Wilberg ended up not being as productive maybe in that role as the team had hoped, and decided that the best move was just to go pretty much all offense and put Trey at the 5. But he's at the 4. He can do a lot of different things. And Dustin's right. The first practice of the summer, some of us were in there watching, and we saw Trey go up, and we thought he was going to do a little hook shot, and it was a lob to Jacobson for a dunk. And we're like, okay, that's a new wrinkle that we haven't seen before. And that option is there now. I think, he's probably on board, like Dustin said, with everybody else. The main goal is not statistical for anybody on this team. And I think that's why you see, a lot of players on this team are right in the same area in terms of points per game. Obviously Braden's got the assist numbers still, but that's because he's got the ball in his hands and he can do anything he really wants, and can manipulate defenses night in and night out. But Trey's made obviously a concerted effort to be a better rebounder this year, and the assist numbers and passing the ball back out of the post to open shooters are definitely developments in his game that last year, if it went in the paint, most of the time he averaged a few assists, maybe 3 or 4 assists a game last year, but I felt like he was shooting it almost every single time last year.
Yeah, I think also it's, he's now this super established star, right? So he's just getting that much more attention from the other team. Last year, him and Braden's kind of ball screen connection really came on the scene. The year before, it was Braden and Zach so often, or Zach getting traditional post-ups. I think now going into this year, teams had a full off season to kind of review, like, man, how do we stop this ball screen action between Braden and Trey, this pocket pass? we saw Iowa State and we've seen other teams throw even additional defenders kind of into the lane to try to stop Trey when he gets that short roll. And offensively, when he does get traditional post-ups, he's seeing double teams a lot. To that individual's question who he asked, I was really impressed with Trey's game the other day. I think there has been times in the past in his career when he's been facing these constant double teams, he's allowed that frustration of not being able to like go ISO and score the basketball at will, like he's so good at if he is one-on-one, frustrate him and cause him to have issues throughout the rest of his game. And I think he's getting more comfortable with understanding, like, sometimes I'm just not going to be able to like get 20 plus points because teams are going to be throwing multiple defenders at me. He had 4 assists, 0 turnovers, bunch of rebounds, didn't force things. Like he's not forcing shots through double teams. He's very unselfish. He's a willing passer. Both him and Oscar are great at that. And and so his usage is down. Sam talked about it last year. He was playing sometimes 20, 25 minutes a game at the 5 spot, and he's got 4 shooters around him. So he's got all kinds of space in the paint now to maneuver and do his little up and unders and his, all the herky jerky stuff that he's so good at. It's so unorthodox. Even though we all know he's going to go left shoulder, right hook, right? Like the whole gym knows he's so good with kind of some of those shoulder fakes and head fakes that he's able to get to it. And that allowed him space to flourish offensively, I think. And that's why he put up such big numbers. Whereas this year he's playing alongside a traditional big a lot. And so there's a little bit less space for him in that painted area to do his thing. And, I think he's been adjusting to that, obviously. But, you can't hate on the numbers we're putting up offensively and the efficiency we're doing it at. So I think he's done a nice job adjusting to his new role.
Yeah, I would agree 100%. And, if anything, last year, I thought there were some times where, maybe he wanted to force a little bit, even though he's getting those points and maybe didn't completely trust whoever he might be tossing the ball to out of those doubles or when help came on him. And that Penn State game specifically, one of the things I highlighted on the post-game show was I love that he just made the right read. Like he just made the simple right read and let other guys go get buckets in those situations. And if they're going to show him that much attention, I feel like that's just what's got to keep happening. Think looking forward to the Iowa game that he's going to have more opportunities and it might be a big TKR scoring game, but we'll see as we get to that. Sam, you've got a fan in the chat. ND Hurler 55 says Sam King is the man. Dustin, I've got nothing for you. I'm sorry, but Sam's got a fan.
I'm gonna get Dustin some fans. Come on.
Yeah. All right, so let's we're gonna go to one of the guys that maybe doesn't get as much love all the time, although Rafael Davis has been throwing him a bunch of love of late. Double D Sports mentioned in the chat that CJ Cox hasn't had a turnover. They said 9 games. I think it's 8 games, but could be either one. Additionally, though, I highlighted today that his scoring average has gone up about 3 points a game. If you narrow that down to just power conference teams that they faced this year, it's gone up almost 4 points a game this year, while also playing himself into the conversation of potentially being a Big Ten all-defensive team player this year. What have you guys seen from CJ Cox, and how important is it that 4th and 5th option, wherever you consider him to be offensively, is lethal out there at the same time?
I'll
sorry, I didn't direct that towards anybody.
No, I think it's my turn to start, so I'll go. I've been really impressed with CJ this year. He's been phenomenal in his role. But to your point, like he's got enough offensive game to him that there's times, I think, I'm trying to remember which game it was. It might have been Washington, where there was it was a kind of a late game situation. The other team was doing a really good job denying Braden Smith the basketball. We couldn't quite get it to him. We were trying to run a set play with Braden initiating, and CJ was, trying to get it to him. And eventually CJ was like, all right, I guess I just got to go make a play and get a bucket, and made a really nice drive, hit a really tough contested shot, mid-range jumper. And I was just like, man, that's so nice to have another dude out there that if for whatever reason you can't get one of your big 3 of the basketball, you're not just thinking we're screwed. You're thinking this guy's fully capable of doing his own thing. And, Wisconsin, he had a fun moment. He was on the right wing, right in front of Purdue's bench, and Braden Smith was kind of closer to half court. And Braden was calling for the basketball. I think it might have been like off an offensive rebound or something, got kicked out to CJ. And Braden was like, hey, hit me, we'll reset. And the guy guarding Braden was just close enough to Braden that it wasn't like just an easy pass to him. And so then CJ was like, you know what? I'm just going to call for Oscar to come up here and set one for me. And he took like a couple dribbles off the ball screen, rises up, hits a three, top of the key. And then you're just like, man, that's just the maturation of a guy like, hey, Braden, I'm obviously going to defer to you more often than not, but I'm also confident enough in myself that I feel I can go make a play for us as well. And he's his two-way ability, guarding the other team's best perimeter player night in, night out, his active hands. I love when he gets those active hands going defensively. He, to me, is Braden's really good at it too, but he's the best to me as far as that on the ball, quick hands, deflect, pick someone's pocket kind of thing. He's great at that. And, he rebounds as well for his position, for being, a little bit of an undersized if you're calling, Fletch the three, CJ the three, either way, but does a great job battling those bigger guys at times. And then offensively, good spot up 3-point shooter, which you really need, of course, with Braden Smith and Trey Kaufman-Renn, but also enough off the bounce ability that can attack closeouts and can play off ball screens as well.
I think the big thing for me is he just seems like he's more comfortable and that he's making decisions quicker. And when he gets the ball in open situations, I felt like last year he was maybe a little bit more hesitant. There were some games where he did a really good job of getting the ball up quick, but there were other times where I hate to say that the moment was too big, maybe he just didn't feel comfortable shooting in certain situations. I think he has that confidence now. And to use a Matt Paynerism, like he always says, we can't rebound your turnover. And I think CJ's kind of taken that to heart. Like if he's got an open look, don't pass up an open look because you may not get it again, especially against some of these better defensive teams. So I think for me, it's probably just a pretty simple, maybe a cliche, making that big leap from freshman to sophomore year and just being more comfortable and confident in the offense.
Last year, too, I've noticed this as of late. Last year, he was picking up guys full court and guarding the guy for the full length of the floor. And now he'll go up and try to get a cheap steal. If it's not there, he backs up and he's picking him up at the half court. And I don't know how much extra energy that allows him to have, but he's done a phenomenal job.
I've done that before. It's not fun. You exert a lot of energy doing that.
Yeah, he's done a great job guarding on the ball. There's been guys that have just been better offense than he provided defense at times and scored on him. But I think the other day was a perfect example. He had 3 steals. He had 2 that really came at a crucial moment. And then those N1s that he got late in the game were the difference because Penn State was still fully in that thing. And that was the moment where I felt like, okay, that closes the deal. Purdue's going to win this thing and hold the team off. And I asked after the game, it seems like every single night, CJ Cox does something to help this team win, whether that's rebounding, steals, on-ball defense, having a big game like he had against, I think it was Memphis in the Bahamas. And he's just a winning player. That's why he's starting. That's what Matt Painter said before the season. Every drill that they ran, CJ Cox was somehow on the winning team of that drill. And he said, that still matters. The guy wins at everything. That's a quality you want in your starting lineup.
And to that point, quietly throughout the season, I didn't really realize it until I started digging into his stats a little bit today for this show. His minutes have gone up almost 5 minutes per game from last year. And it didn't feel like that just in real time. I hadn't noticed that they'd actually gone up that much. His 3-point attempts have gone up almost double, and he's shooting basically the exact same percent off of more attempts. So yeah, I think CJ's been huge at what he's been able to do defensively, but I think he's shown what he can be offensively. He's had some incredible passes too. That little like one-handed friggin' bounce pass off a high pick and roll to Oscar the other day was awesome. All right. Let's get to one that's a pretty quick answer type of one. So Tip at 523, we always appreciate you tuning in and all of your support that you've given towards the show as well. Are you more worried about Nebraska, Michigan, or Michigan State for the big title? Dustin, I'll start with you. Then we'll go to Sam and finally Bobby. And maybe give just like a real quick, this is why.
Well, people probably don't know this, but I live with a Husker, so I got to be careful here on my answer. To me, I still think it's Michigan. I just think that the level of talent they had, and I know that they lost a home game to Wisconsin the other day, but I think the level of talent that they have and the way they've just blown away a lot of their opponents this season, that's really stood out to me. I think if you had to pick a favorite, like I still think Purdue's the favorite to win the Big Ten, but I would put Michigan in that category. I think Nebraska's really good, but I also feel like they've played with fire a little bit, and there's going to be a stretch where maybe they drop a couple games. So to me, I think Michigan is probably Purdue's biggest contender in that regard, but it's like there's a lot of really good teams in the Big Ten, and none of those teams that mentioned, if they're at the top, is going to surprise me.
Yeah, I think Michigan, because Michigan has probably 2 first-round draft picks at least on this roster that are going to be selected this year. So that tells you that the top-end talent they have. Dusty May's done a phenomenal job, not only at Michigan, but at Florida Atlantic, which got him the Michigan job, and obviously learned under great coaching when he was at Indiana as a student. So I think that, from the top-end talent there, I think Michigan's probably the biggest threat. I'm still not sold on Nebraska, which is wild to say for a team that's undefeated this late in the year and a team that right now is 5-0 in the Big Ten. You would think has the inside track. What works out, and we talked about this earlier to touch on it again, Purdue plays Illinois at home, the only meeting this year, Michigan at home, the only meeting this year, and Michigan State at home, the only meeting this year. The schedule just worked out in a year where Purdue had this veteran roster of guys who had been in a Final Four and all year long. It's not us saying this stuff. It's the players also were talking about national championship, which sometimes coaches warn not to get ahead of themselves. I think with this one, Painters just kind of said like, hey, if that's the goal, speak it into an existence type thing. And I really think Purdue's just kind of on a course to win this thing. But you can't stub your toe. I mean, any loss in the Big Ten this year could be pivotal, could be the difference between being, a 2 seed in the Big Ten tournament and a 6 or 7 seed in the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah, the way I look at it, I'm thinking I don't think Michigan State quite has enough offensive firepower, especially shooting the basketball, to be the top threat. They definitely have a really good team. I think they're going to be super effective at home. Just the physicality, the way they are in transition. But I just think offensively, they're not quite elite enough to go through kind of the road gauntlet of the Big Ten and not have take some L's along the way. Obviously, nice for Purdue that they come to Mackey and we don't have to go to the Breslin Center, as you guys have talked about. That's huge. So I think to me, it's between Michigan and Nebraska, and I think it's close. I was just kind of trying to look at their schedules really quick because I just was trying to see, which remaining road games do each of these teams have that are kind of the major chances of slipping up. And it looks like Michigan's remaining road schedule to me is much more difficult than Nebraska's. Nebraska, 3 of their tougher road games, Illinois, Ohio State, Indiana, on paper, they've been able to win already, which is certainly huge for Nebraska. They get Purdue at home, which is obviously nice. Don't have to go to Mackey Arena. They do go to Michigan, which is going to be tough. At UCLA, I think, which should be pretty tough. And then at Iowa. So kind of 3 road games, I would say, that seem semi-daunting or extremely daunting. And then for Michigan, they got the home and home with Michigan State. They got to go to Mackey. Got to go to Illinois and Iowa. They got to worry about a Duke game. It's not Big Ten really. They got to worry about
a game against Duke
still. Yeah. And they go to on the West Coast trip at Washington, at Oregon. So to me, Michigan at Ohio State, rivalry game kind of there. So I think Michigan's got a tougher schedule than Nebraska. So I wouldn't be stunned. And Nebraska's got such a good home court advantage. I'm really enjoy going to Nebraska the couple times I've gone there as an analyst. It's also one of my favorite road radio positions. So that's probably also why I think highly of it, but they have got a great atmosphere in that arena. They've given us a lot of hard matchups there in Lincoln. So I think I might lean Nebraska.
I'll say from Bobby here.
Rick Mass had his way with Purdue a couple of years ago, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
When they played, and then Tom and Naga just went.
You went nuclear on us.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do think Michigan is still the biggest contender for the Big Ten title because of how hard it's going to be for everybody else to beat them. I don't see multiple losses coming very easily to them. I oddly am more worried about the Nebraska matchup specifically for Purdue, just with Mass being able to kind of pull our big outs and the way they're able to move the ball and the actions that they run, plus it being at Nebraska. But Michigan's still the one that worries me the most in terms of an actual Big Ten title. So there's been some, like, Fletcher Loyer, for whatever reason with fans, seems to always be this, like, I don't know, this like hot topic around him. Nobody really was paying attention to the fact, at least I wasn't. I'd mentioned it earlier in the year, at the beginning of the year, that I thought he could finish second all time in 3-pointers made for Purdue, but I hadn't paid attention to what his pace and his average was and his increase in attempts this year, and the fact that he actually has a chance to break it. And quite frankly, I don't see how he doesn't break it at this point. He's averaging 2.7 makes a game. Right now, that would be 16 games from now. So the very first game of the Big Ten tournament that he would break Carson's record for career 3-pointers. Bobby, there's a reason that your name is Bobby Buckets. So I'm going to throw this to you as a shooter. Like, are those, is that variance between, like, okay, you may have a game or 2 games in a row where you go 1 of 5 or 0 of 6, and then you shoot 60% for the next 2 games. Is that just normal for shooters? Is that just the way it works? Do Purdue fans have any reason to be worried about Fletcher shooting at all? I'm setting you up for this easily.
No, I don't think so. I mean, every shooter is going to go through hot streaks, cold streaks. It's just the nature of the beast. The best and most consistent shooters, of course, limit the colder streaks and have more hot streaks, which I think we would all agree that Fletcher has more hot streaks than cold streaks. But everybody's going to go through little ruts. But Fletcher is the type of shooter that is expecting every shot to go in. And so he's not going to be deterred by missing 4, 5, 6 shots in a row, because now he's expecting the next 6 to go in. So, and I think Fletcher's also a guy that, for the most part, every now and then he might take, if he takes 7 threes in a game, there might be one that you're like, all right, maybe a little bit rushed, a little bit forced. But for the most part, I think the threes that he takes are in rhythm, they're open. And of course, he gets the blessing of playing with a guy like Braden Smith, who, man, as someone who's a shooter myself, just would have been a dream come true to play with a guy like that, who's setting up, his fellow guards with optimum looks all the time. And Trey Kaufman-Renn and Oscar Clough are both super unselfish big guys. A perimeter player loves playing with bigs that aren't black holes, that where you throw it to them, if they draw a double, they're going to be willing to kick it out. And I think those 2 big guys do such a good job of not forcing shots through double teams. And so, Fletch is the beneficiary of a lot of really good looks. And I also think his ability to make threes in transition is something that maybe isn't valued high enough, because those are really difficult shots. And I feel like he makes a really high percentage of those. And he's not a perfect player. He's got flaws. There's very few perfect players, if any. And I know some of his flaws are hot topics, I'm sure, but the guy's been a super productive player, and I do think he brings valuable stuff on the floor that sometimes doesn't necessarily show up in a stat sheet. And I think Coach Painter values those sorts of things. And I think he's done a nice job evolving his game throughout the course of his career, offensively, especially being able to, score in a multitude of ways. He's pretty crafty. And I think defensively, he's clearly not one of the best on-ball defenders out there. He's got some limitations there. But I do think as a help side defender, off-ball defender, a guy following scouting reports, he's about as good as we have as far as doing some of that stuff. And I know that's the type of stuff that a lot of people aren't necessarily going to see. Like, oh, the pass for a layup didn't happen because Fletcher was in the right spot off the ball. Well, no one sees that because the pass never occurs, and that doesn't really resonate. But that's a layup if it's someone else who's in there and isn't in the right spot. So he does those sorts of things well. And obviously Coach Painter trusts him.
Yeah, I've lost Twitter followers over defending Fletcher Loyer for whatever reason over the years, but I know plus and minus isn't the end all be all, telling stat, but this is a guy who's at the top of plus minus almost every single game, which tells you when he's in the game, he is affecting Purdue's chances of
Good
winning.
things are happening.
Yeah, and he's obviously basketball savvy. His dad coached in an NBA for a long time and grew up around that. The guy gets it, and I think he's well aware that he's not the best defensive player, but like Bobby said, he affects games just by being in the right spot. And then when this is all said and done, and he comes back 10 years from now, and he's highlighted sitting in Mackey Arena watching the game, people are going to love Fletcher Loyer. They're going to be proud of what he accomplished when he's at Purdue. He's, with Braden, he's going to end up starting the most games in Purdue history, has a chance to go to a second Final Four. And this is the stat that I pointed out before the year that will probably change once Fletcher Loyer graduates. Only 9 players in Purdue's program have averaged double-digit figures offensively scoring for all 4 seasons of their career, and Fletcher Loyer will be the 10th. So it's rare. It's guy like AJ Hammonds, I think, was maybe the last to do it, and he was right on that cusp. Like every year, he didn't have a big breakout year. But Braden Smith's not going to do that. He didn't average double figures as a freshman, I don't believe. And so that tells you that Fletcher Loyer, who's now above 1,500 career points, I think it is, going to be one of the elite scorers in the history of Purdue basketball.
All right. So, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say the one underrated value that Fletcher brings is he, to me, is like the unquestioned leader in terms of his communication ability. And it's something that Matt Painter talked about last year and he's talked about this year. So don't, like, when he's on the floor, his communication skill is kind of what keeps that defense together at times.
Kind of going off that real quick, I think I asked either Fletcher or Braden this a year or two ago. I said, do you guys get in fights over who's the kind of the alpha dog and calling things out like that? And they're both so good at communicating that I think times they're just so competitive they get into it with each other sometimes. That's not affecting the play on the court, but I think that's just kind of the two guys that they are when they're in a huddle or when they're out there calling things for the offense. They both can be trusted to make the right call. And, they've butted heads a little bit, but it's all in the betterment of the team, I think.
Yeah. All right. So I could talk basketball for 2 hours, but I promised you guys an hour, so we're not going to do that. So we're going to kind of go with some rapid fire stuff here real quick. Nolan Duvall said 2 questions if you have time. Is there a chart graph of all of Braden's assists? Who all they went to and how many? I think Cobra Stats is the one that has the nicest. I don't want to say nicest. I know Cobra Stats is the one who has one for sure that kind of gives a lot of that information, and that's cobrastatistics.com. Nolan also says, so this is rapid fire. I don't want an explanation. Just give me an answer. Nolan says, what's the score if the upper class played the freshmen and sophomores? Thank you. Bobby, first.
What's the score if Purdue's current upperclassmen play the underclassmen in a pickup game? Well, I think we saw it I think you guys were able to see it too at times, like in some of the preseason scrimmages and stuff. Like it could go either way, but I would take the upperclassmen to get the victory. I'll go in a full game, 85 to 74.
Dustin?
I'm gonna say 90 to 72.
Rapid fire. It's closer. It's like Bobby said, it's going to be closer. I'm writing a story about Aaron Fine, and it's not so much what Aaron Fine does because he doesn't play a whole lot, but he disrupts Braden every single day in practice to the point that Braden gets frustrated and mad at him. These guys know each other so well and know that, you see a guy that much, you're going to pick up tendencies and know how to take their best skills away. So I think I would go like 86 to 80. The seniors and juniors would win.
The upperclassmen only have 5, right? So I'm gonna lean. I'm gonna lean underclassmen here because if they foul one guy out, it's 5-on-4 at that point. So
my team's on the floor, coach.
Hey, Sam King, don't forget Sam King's giving a boost to the upperclassmen.
Not me, the other Sam King, but
not this Sam King, the other Sam King.
That's true. That's very true. Sam King, the walk-on, not Sam King, the reporter. So, all right. This is only for you, Bobby. This is from Taterology. With NIL being what it is now, do you think we'll see more high school recruits redshirting that first year to take advantage of 5 years of NIL and maybe even possibly reclassifying to get to college early to get 5 and then redshirting for 5 years of NIL?
I know for a fact if I wasn't just a surefire stud from day one, I would love to accept a red shirt so I can make 6 figures plus for 5 years. That sounds like a tremendous opportunity. So, yeah, I think you'll see a lot more guys willing to accept a red shirt because of the opportunity to make a lot more money throughout the course of their career. And, if you're not a surefire stud from day one, who's going to be getting all kinds of money right away, the chance to make substantial money as a 23-year-old fifth-year senior is a lot better than if you play that 18-year-old year where you're not an established star yet. So by not redshirting, you could definitely be losing out on some serious money as a fifth-year senior down the road if you become an established superstar. So all these guys are really confident in themselves and they don't want to redshirt a lot of times, but they should spin it and be like, if I'm confident enough in myself, I think I could be a star when I'm 23 and I can make Braden Smith money.
And this is a conversation for an entirely different night, but I do think it's really interesting what's happening with NIL in terms of what type of player is staying and how that's changing what college basketball looks like compared to the NBA, because maybe undersized point guards, combo guards that don't have an NBA future, but are really, really good college players are staying around and making a lot of money, and also traditional big men in the same way. And to me, it's forcing the two games into different directions just a little bit, but topic for another day. All right. So just a couple more real quick. Omar Moyer, there was a lot of hype around him coming into this season. Primarily now it looks like he's in a backup point guard role to Braden. I think there was too much hype about what he might have been as a scorer, whereas people who actually watched his body of work maybe didn't necessarily see that coming in, just saw him more as a really good facilitator early on. Is he who he is, or is there still a chance between now and March that we might see this dramatic change in terms of his role on the team, his scoring ability, those type of things? I'll just open it up to the floor.
I think he's been what I thought he would be. And even though going into the season, I thought he might start instead of CJ Cox, and you have the dynamic of really 2 point guards on the floor, which we've seen Purdue utilize here as of late. But he's still a freshman, and there is an adjustment period to college basketball. I don't care if you've been a pro player in Europe or not, and played in FIBA and all that. There is an adjustment not only to college basketball. He's adjusting from living in Israel to West Lafayette, Indiana. He came here without a winter coat. That tells you how unprepared he was for maybe what he was getting into entirely. But this has been a great experience for him to learn under some great guys. And what he talked to me about was his ultimate goal is to go to the NBA, and he saw Purdue as the best place to provide what he needed to get there. And this year, that just happens to be playing some spot minutes, but he's still capable of doing some great things. We saw the play that broke down at the end of the half was at Washington right before halftime, and the play breaks down, and instead of panicking, which most freshmen probably do in that moment, he drives left and shoots an incredibly tough baseline jumper, but it goes in and beats the buzzer. I think he's got a lot of basketball experience, and this is a team that I've said numerous times this year, Purdue will beat you depth by depth. They just have 9 players deep that all are capable starters, and he's definitely one of them. But with Braden Smith playing the amount of minutes he does, and with what Moyer can do, I think this is kind of the role I saw for him.
Yeah, I would, to reiterate Sam's point, I think the one thing that I like about Omar is he is not he doesn't have the same hesitancy, I don't think, that we saw from Jakari and CJ in their freshman seasons. He's a confident shooter, and it doesn't matter if he's missed his last 10. He's confident in putting that up. And that bucket came at a pivotal time for Purdue in that Washington game. And so I think Omar is still a really good player, but I think fans have to get over what it's going to look like in the box score. I think he's a really good player. I think he does exactly what he's asked to do. The only thing I think you want to see him maybe cut down on, and Painter's talked about this, is the mistakes and maybe trying to get a little too fancy or cutesy at times with the passes, but you also don't want to restrict his creativity in his game. So I think Omar has been fantastic, and I do think he'll get better, but I don't think that necessarily means he's going to be like a 9-point per game scorer or anything like that.
No doubt. I think both you guys are spot on. And yes, so a lot of it's limited to opportunity. He's got, CJ Cox has been so good that, and Sam talked about him winning all those drills in practice. A lot of times the competitive stuff, like CJ's been able to carve out a little bit bigger role, and Omar's had to take kind of that back seat as far as being a bench guy who plays behind Braden sometimes when Braden's out, and we all know Braden didn't come out very much. So there's not a lot of opportunity for him to be that ball dominant guy. And for anyone who watched Omar, most of his success in the past has been when he's been a ball dominant guy for his team, and he's able to have the ball in his hands all game long, get into a rhythm, play through a lot of ball screens. He's like Braden a little bit to where, and Braden's gotten better as he's gone through the course of his career, but neither Braden or Omar is really an elite one-on-one player. Both of them are better at kind of using ball screens, getting angles, and then using their skill, whether that's passing or shooting off the dribble, to be at their best. And we've seen Omar have to adjust to playing off the ball a lot more this year. He's been very inconsistent at times shooting off the catch. It was nice to see him make some catch and shoot threes here as of late, because I think that is important if he's going to be in that role, to be able to step up and hit some of those catch and shoot threes. But yeah, he's a guy that's been used to having the ball in his hands his whole life. And so there's been that adjustment period. But I think he really tries on the defensive end. He gives good effort. He's got, he's not perfect, doesn't have elite lateral foot speed, but I feel like he does a lot with what he has. He's got good physicality to him. And, offensively, yes, got a little loose with the ball at times. I agree with Dustin on that. He's got to clean those up. But overall, been very pleased with him. And I think, he's a little bit restricted by role. I think we'll see next year, the full Omar Moyer experience when he's able to play, 25 minutes a game, kind of running the show.
Yeah. And I actually feel like, for me, his best games have been his last few games, because it feels like he's found his role. He found his niche. I think his defense has improved, even though he's taken less shot attempts in these last few games. It feels like, to me, they're coming more in rhythm in terms of the natural offense. And he's, to me, kind of taken that David Jenkins charge of, like, I hate shot clocks randomly too. Like, he always hits a contested shot when it's at the end of the shot clock. So I love that.
He doesn't have to think, right? That's
Right.
sometimes the easiest shot to take is those ones where it's not like, should I take it? Should I not? Oh, I've missed my last couple. It's, I have to shoot. The clock's going off, and you don't think, and you just let your natural stuff take over. I think it frees up players, and I think we've seen that with him sometimes.
Yeah, and I think the scoring is going to go way up next year. Coming into this year, just watching him and FIBA and whatnot, coming into this year, I felt like he needed volume to get into that rhythm, kind of like Carson did. And I think his scoring is going to go way up next year when he has a much bigger role as well. Two quick questions, or two more questions, then I'll let you guys go if you have the time. Everybody got the time? You okay, Bobby? You need to go put the kids to bed, or?
Well, how about if I just let them handle the last two questions? How about that? And I run. I just got a message that it might be time to wrap for me.
Okay. All right, Bobby. Well, we thank you very much. I had to get a Braden Smith question in, because we've made it 63 minutes into this show and not ask a question really about Braden Smith, potentially National Player of the Year. Bobby, we thank you very, very much for joining us today and all of your insight. So go get those kids to bed. Thank you for your time tonight, and we'll see you soon.
Absolutely, guys. It was great talking with you all, and Kraig, thanks for having me. See you guys.
See you Wednesday.
See.
All right, guys. So like I said, we've made it this far. We have not yet really talked about Braden Smith. I don't like that view. Don't like that view. There we go. Coming back to this for now. Is we watched Braden Smith's just epic greatness going through this year. he's going to break the NCAA all-time assist record. I don't even think it's a question anymore in terms of the amount that he's increased his average. Right now, I think it's sitting at 3 games into the postseason. There's almost zero chance that Purdue doesn't get at least 3 games into this postseason. Just real quick from you two, like in your mind, what are his odds? I think, he was preseason National Player of the Year, and then it felt like he kind of got left out of that conversation as some of these freshmen were having huge years. But as we've gotten into conference play, some of those freshmen haven't looked quite as dominant as what they did. And it almost felt like the last 2 games, Braden was like, oh, hey, by the way, I can put up 20 to 25 whenever I want also. Like, where do you think that conversation is right now? And does he still have a chance to win National Player of the Year?
You want to go ahead, Dustin?
Either way.
I still think he has a great shot. I do think that a little bit of maybe why he fell off is because a lot of it just boiled down to the assist numbers. And I think people were just looking at his ability to pass the basketball, which is at an elite level, but he almost got labeled as just an elite passer as opposed to an elite point guard. And these last 2 games, like he said it in the post game, like, did you guys forget I could score? And he's put up 20-point games in each of the last 2 contests. Don't expect that every single night, but I think as Purdue continues to win games and he continues to have these type of nights, and again, he's done these in some of Purdue's most important moments. Like he took that Alabama game over, scored 29 points and hit a lot of clutch shots down the stretch. He did it again against Penn State. That was a game that was closer than I think a lot of people thought it was going to be, and he goes off for 26 and 14. So, I haven't paid too much attention to the National Player of the Year conversation about who's all in that mix with him. But I do think he still has a great shot. I just think that because of everybody talking about the Big Ten assist record, the NCAA assist record, it just kind of like he got labeled as just a great passer instead of one of the great point guards. That's kind of where I stand on that.
Yeah, I think that probably made somewhat of a difference. When people looked at his scoring average and it's around, it was in the 10s and 11s for a while, he's now Purdue's leading scorer. If he ends up being leading the nation in assists and being the leading scorer on a team that's a number 1 seed in the NCAA tournaments, I don't know how you don't give it to that guy. Just, I know it's not a team award, but that tells me he's the best player on one of the best teams. It's kind of where Zach Edey was. I didn't think he would win National Player of the Year his senior year coming back because I thought there would just be like Edey fatigue where people were like, we've seen him do it before. And Braden Smith was a Cousy Award winner last year, and we've seen him now for 3 seasons. I think people are kind of like, what's the new blood? We want to see something fresh. But he's never won National Player of the Year. To his credits, he says he doesn't care. I know he does. He absolutely would love to win National Player of the Year. But I definitely think if he didn't win National Player of the Year and Purdue won a national title, he would not give a damn about that National Player of the Year award.
Perfect. And I just think the longer and longer we get into conference play, the more everybody else is going to kind of come back a little bit, and the more Braden, because let's be honest, like when Purdue was blowing everybody out, he was just swinging the ball around, letting everybody else score. When we get into more serious games in conference play, I think you're going to see him take over a little bit more from that standpoint. So last question, then I'll let you guys go. Jason Depew says, what do you think is the team's biggest weakness for making a run at the national championship? I had a similar question, so I'm going to flip this the other way so we end on a positive note. What's the biggest X factor to this team making a run to the national championship? Because to me, the biggest X factor is going to address whatever that weakness is.
I'll start, and mostly because I tweeted this a few weeks back. I think the biggest X factor, and it's an individual, is Daniel Jacobson. And I know that he's splitting time with Oscar Clough, and Oscar was so good the other day that you couldn't take him out of the game, so Daniel only got 10 minutes. But he is a rim protector that Purdue desperately needed a year ago, and the reason why it wasn't a very good defensive team, you were just limited at the basket there. If you can split him and Oscar, and he can continue blocking shots the way he does, he's going to shoot 75-80% just because he's 7'4" and he doesn't have to do a whole lot. But he can also shoot. He can pull people away. He hasn't done it a whole lot. And to a wider degree, I'm going to go like the full bench. But I think that he's the one guy off the bench. Jakari's great. Omar Moyer is a really good player off the bench, Jack Benter, but I think he's the one that can really make a difference. And we've seen it. He had a 20-point game already this year, like a 24-point game or whatever it was. He's a guy that can definitely just change the game because he has elite size and length.
I'm going to piggyback off Sam because I think that's a really good answer. I'm just going to go with the bench in general. And one player, I don't think he's the X factor, but I feel like we should mention him just because of how well he's played this season. Jack Benner is a guy that I think like the smartest thing I had, he's made it, the smartest prediction I had was that Jack Benner in a few games this season would have a few of those moments where people, not, casual Big Ten fans would say, where did this guy come from? And it seems to me that even if he doesn't score, he's always around the basketball. He's always making plays. He's taking a lot of charges. There's been a couple times when teams have been on fast breaks and he just gets in the way on the fast break and is able to cause a miss and get a rebound. I think more than last year, I just feel like this Purdue team does a lot of little things. And I think that makes the biggest difference. I think you could look at the rebounding and say that that's probably the biggest reason why they'll get to the championship. But I do like Sam's death by depth. I think that's a perfect reason as to why this team can win a national championship this year.
I really like both answers. And to your point, Dustin, casual Big Ten observers or Stephen Pearl, who didn't know that Jack Benner could shoot from three
Yes.
either, based on his post-game press conference. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. So I'm going to answer this in kind of, I'm glad you brought up the rebounding, but we just to acknowledge, like we have not mentioned Oscar Clough's name other than in passing once this entire show. And his rebounding, I think, is so key to where this team can go. But not only that, the fact that if Trey gets in foul trouble, or if they're doubling up on Trey, we have an entirely different post option that we can go to. We saw it just the last game where he puts up 20 points. So we have that secondary post player that can do both things, that can impact from a rebounding standpoint, defensive standpoint, not make blocking shots, but just bodying up and being physical, but also rebounding. I am also going to just acknowledge today's Jason Depew because he did ask specifically about weakness. My biggest concern still about this team is our ability to guard long physical wings that are skilled, that can shoot from outside and or put the ball on the deck and try to get to the rim. Because to me, the biggest thing in the Iowa State game was Momcilovic, a big long wing that can shoot from outside, that can put it on the deck a little bit, shoot mid-range, get all the way to the rim. That's probably my one big concern. So for me, my like X factor is this team playing high enough quality team defense, because I don't know that we have a one-on-one guy to stop that kind of guy, that we are locked in from a communication standpoint, a rotation standpoint to an elite level. That's my X factor, this team getting to a national championship. Dustin, Sam, thank you very, very much. We're going to wrap up. I promised you an hour. We're in an hour 12. I do want you guys to let people know where they can find your work, though. At Boilers in the Stands, we always love to promote everybody else who is also doing a great job covering Purdue basketball. So, Dustin, tell them again who you work for, where they can find you, where they can find everything that you're putting out.
Yeah, you can find all the content at Purdue Boilermakers on SI. It's si.com/college/Purdue. And you can follow me on social media on X at Schutte Dustin.
And Sam?
My social media handle for Instagram and for X is Samuel T. King. And jconline.com is where most of my content ends up. It also ends up on IndyStar.com. Sometimes also at USA Today. But if you go to jconline.com, anything that I write will be on there. There will be a piece on Aaron Fine in the morning. So there's a guy that doesn't get a whole lot of publicity, but I think it's a little intriguing story about how he ended up at Purdue and the impact he's having on a team's Big Ten championship aspirations, despite not being the guy getting the minutes.
All right. Well, we thank you guys both very much. Both do an incredible job covering Purdue basketball, and I appreciate you both for hopping on tonight. For those of you that follow Boilers in the Stands, we will be back. We have a preview show out that Joe and I recorded on Sunday for Purdue versus Iowa. We will be back after that game on Wednesday, January 14th in Mackey Arena at 6:30. Last home game before Purdue, I think, has a stretch of 6 out of 8 on the road after that one. So Tune in for the post-game show, and we will see you all then.